Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 19th of March, comes to you from London. I start, as always, by looking at the dollar index. Today, I'm actually using the Metastock Zenith feed, which is actually the same as the Reuters icon feed, but for private users. So, really, this is for the first time. This same list that I would use in Reuters, private users can now use in Updata, and keep an eye out for our announcements on that this week. So first of all, we look at the dollar index. We see here that we're bullish in the short term. Haven't quite activated these upside targets. There's one that is activated, 4% higher. Not quite yet on this one, and there is resistance. So the dollar might just hit some resistance here in the medium term. We're seeing that as well. And of course, we still do have the bearish picture, medium and long term, with things hanging over us. On the euro, we see that we're bearish in the short term. That's reflecting that dollar weakness. And then on Japanese yen, we're seeing here the dollar just holding on but teetering along the bottom, and still multiple downside targets, so that's quite key as well. Sterling looking a little bit stronger, just nudging this 140 level but can't quite get through the cloud, so just really sitting flat against the dollar the last few days. And against the euro, we're seeing sterling increasing slightly, and against the Swiss franc, we're also seeing that, and against the Australian dollar, we're also seeing that. So sterling kicking higher there. We're making new highs against the Aussie dollar, so that's quite key as well. Bitcoin, we're seeing up slightly this morning, but just hitting that resistance level on the cloud, just struggling there to get through. We look at the long-term cloud, we see prices actually coming through on that long-term cloud, so starting to look a little bit more worrying in the long-term picture. Downside target here to 5,200, which is a 36% fall from here. So Bitcoin still just looking bearish in the short term. No clear upside or downside targets. Keep an eye on the 1-minute charts if you're trading Bitcoin. The S&P 500 index just holding on Friday, but US markets just really showing that rise slowly out of the fall away that we saw at the end of January, and the February low is we're seeing that recovery kicking through, just making slightly higher highs. The key thing is we've got to hold this low of 2,675 on the S&P. At the moment, the recovery is there and in train. We do have short-term upside target here of 7% on the S&P. The Nasdaq also just making new highs last week and holding the gains, but Friday we just fell away a little bit, but still looking fairly bullish in the short to medium term. The Dow also still looking pretty strong, holding on to its short-term trend just, and the Russell 2000 just showing that the recovery is fairly broad-based. We see here that we are just holding the bull trend as well, but not managing to make a new high yet. The S&P E-mini is down quite sharply this morning, just making new multi-day lows there, so it does look like US markets will open lower. And the Nasdaq E-mini also, we're seeing quite big falls this morning here, so at the moment it does look like the US market will open quite a lot lower. FTSE's down about 1% this morning, so we're just seeing that filtering through to UK markets. FTSE 250 also down about 0.25%, so not as bad, and the DAX down over 1% as well. So markets falling off this morning quite sharply, and of course those US futures are a worry. CAC down just under 1%, but holding its bullish position. And if we look at the Japanese market, it closed down about 1% lower. Hang Seng and the Shanghai index were both, Hang Seng and Shanghai both held on to their gains, but the Sensex was down 0.75% and just making new lows there too. So, and the medium-term chart, just seeing the lagging line coming below there, so that is starting to look worrying with these short-term downside targets, as much as 3% downside potential there on the Sensex. The Aussie market up very, very slightly, just bucking the trend, but not really looking very strong. Globally, equities looking generally quite bad at the moment, and we're seeing those US futures are really driving things right now. Brent crude sitting at 65.80, so we are in bullish territory here. We do have an upside target of 1.3%, and we've got medium-term upside targets as well. And WTI down 0.5% this morning, but again in bullish territory. US nat gas sitting at $2.69. but we are below the cloud and in bearish territory here as well. Taking a look at gold, gold just falling away this morning on that stronger dollar. So we are just seeing that we are bearish at the moment on the short-term chart. We do have downside targets of some 2 to 3% downside. And we know that the seasonal effect on gold is we do tend to fall at this time of year. We saw that last year. And if we look at the longer term weekly chart, we see here how we both years have had that fall away before a summer rally. So we shouldn't be surprised to see gold just falling back at the moment on the long-term picture. And silver much the same as well. So medium term just turning bearish there, just looking a little bit more bearish than gold actually, because the gold chart is still sitting above the cloud. US 10-year Treasury yields just ticking up this morning. Quite a lot of news flow suggesting that we will see interest rates rising earlier in the US with the new Federal Reserve chairman, and so we are just back into bullish territory here. We have seen that pushing towards that 3% level. Apple. Most US tech stocks just sold off on Friday in the end. Apple just holding on to its bullish position, but only just. Amazon down about 2/3%. But having said that, Amazon has had an amazing run lately. Alphabet also just pulling back on Friday, not looking anywhere near as strong as Amazon. And just struggling to make a new high. Hasn't managed it. Facebook actually was up quite strongly on Friday, breaking that 185 level, so looking a bit better there. Again, all of these longer term uptrends targets there, and the short term targets there as well. And Microsoft also just held on Friday. So the picture was pretty mixed on Friday for US tech. But the key thing today is we're seeing these sharp falls on the US futures, and that Nasdaq E-mini is looking pretty worrying. So it does suggest that tech is going to open lower. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.